the program director here in the Government Law Center at Albany Law School. We are very happy to have you all here with us. We are grateful to our panelists. This will be a really interesting discussion focused on childcare and affordability in New York State. I'm going to share a few very brief reminders and housekeeping notes before we get started. This session is part of the Government Law Center's annual Warren Anderson Legislative Series. It's named after Albany Law School alum Warren Anderson, class of 1940. We've been doing this for over 30 years, highlighting experts who are talking about major legal and policy issues pending before state government. This is the third out of 4 programs we're doing this spring. So stay tuned for our next program, April 20th, which will focus on access to New York's healthcare system. We are very grateful to our sponsors. Our series sponsor this year and provided a contribution in memory of Sharon O'Connor, Albany Law School class of 1979. And today's program sponsor is CSEA. The support of the sponsors helps make this happen. So thank you. And into some housekeeping notes. For attorneys here, continuing legal education is available. One credit is available for this program. Your CLE forms have been sent by email. You've also received the program materials by email. If you did not receive them and are looking for those, please let us know in the Q&A box. One CLE code word will be shared during the program. You will need to write this down on your affidavit of attendance. Your CLE forms also must be submitted within 24 hours by email to our CLE office, by email to Lisa Rivage. I will type her contact information in the chat, but you also received this by email. If you have questions throughout the program, please type those in the Q&A box. The chat will be closed because we'll use that to share information with you. And finally, there are captions available. Automated captioning is available. You can select show captions or view transcript at the bottom of the Zoom window to see those. So thank you again for joining us this afternoon for a discussion on childcare and affordability in New York State. I'm going to pass things off to our moderator, Patrick Wilds, class of 2016, who is the director of the Government Law Center here at the law school. So thank you, everyone.
Great, and thank you, Chell, and thank you all for being here today. Thank you to all of our wonderful panelists who've joined us. And before we even get going, thank you to our team at the Government Law Center who do a lot of the behind-the-scene works. Lisa, who's on screen here, and Chell, but our whole team will make sure all of our programming goes off without a hitch. So thank you so much to them. We're thrilled to have this discussion today. And every spring, when we map out our planning for our programs, we assume that the budget will be on time, but this is now, I don't know how many years in a row where it hasn't been the case. However, this topic remains just as relevant and just as timely. So we're really thrilled to be offering a program on affordability with really honing in on childcare. We have 4 fantastic panelists today. You might be wondering why I'm allowed to moderate them. In a prior life, I worked for Governor Hochul advising on human services, mental hygiene related issues. So a lot of the issues we'll discuss today certainly overlap with issues I used to focus on. And on a personal level, I'm paying for one daycare right now, and I'm about to start paying for a second one in a couple months. So this is of personal interest to me, that we educate folks on how the system works, what the changes are that are proposed, and how they're going to impact us statewide. So of course, we know a lot of the impact here is in New York City, but a lot of it is in the rest of the state. And we want to know on a kind of global perspective how the proposed changes are going to impact us as New Yorkers as a whole, being situated here in Albany and having representation through the Government Law Center across our great state. To get us going, we're going to do a lightning round, 1 or 2 minutes max for each panelist. Please just introduce yourselves quickly and just maybe one really pressing component of kind of the childcare space and the affordability space that you're watching at this point in the legislative session. So I'm going to go in order of how folks appear on our screen. Dede, do you want to go first?
Yeah, hi, thank you. My name's Dede Hill. I'm Vice President of Policy at the Schuyler Center for Analysis and Advocacy. And the Schuyler Center is based right here in Albany for 153 years, maybe 54 now. The Schuyler Center has been advancing policy to set up all the state's children, families, and communities to thrive. I'm also here as one of many leaders of the Empire State Campaign for Childcare, which is New York's statewide campaign for universal childcare. And I have to mention that I am a work alum of the Albany Law School. I taught at Albany for 9 years. They were 9 wonderful years. So it's very exciting to be back virtually. So one item that I'm really hoping to see in the final enacted budget is full funding for child care assistance, which is the principal means by which New York State helps low-income working families afford the high cost of child care. And this is essential to ensure a successful and equitable rollout of universal child care and pre-K in New York City and around the state. I'll stop there. More to come on that.
Great, and it's nice to have you back at the law school virtually and hopefully in person again soon. Nora, you're up next on my screen.
Great, thanks. It's hard to go after Dede, but thanks, Pat. Thanks everybody for having. Nora Yates. I'm the Deputy Commissioner here at the New York State Office of Children and Family Services in the Division of Child Care Services. We are the state administrator of the federal child care block grant. We regulate all child care programs in the state, except for the 2,000 daycare centers in New York City, which are under our partners in New York City. And we also administer the child care assistance block grant here in New York State called CCAP, which is the Child Care Assistance Program, which Dede mentioned. I figured out the other day that I've been paying for childcare for 15 years. I figured that out the other day because I continue to pay for childcare. So, you know, a lot invested personally as well as professionally in a lot of the expansions that were announced this year. So we are thrilled with the governor's investment and commitment to an additional $1.2 billion in the Child Care Assistance Program. It's really historic and a proud moment, and that is a 40% increase from last year, which was a huge increase from the previous year. There was a lot of concern, I think, when the pandemic funding ended about how these investments would be sustained, and I think the governor has really not only sustained, but continued to invest. Because of her affordability agenda, she sees this as a real, this is one of the top issues that families struggle with in terms of childcare expense. So we're really excited to administer that program once the budget passes and continue to work with counties. I will stop there.
Great. Assemblymember Lunsford.
Thank you very much. I am Assemblymember Jen Lunsford. I represent the east side suburbs of Monroe County, just outside of Rochester. I am a mom, and when I first took office, I was still paying for daycare. Today, because it is spring break, I am doing assembly daycare, and my son is sitting just off screen. So that is an ongoing issue that we continue to deal with. I am an attorney by trade. I was a trial attorney for 12 years before taking office. So, welcome. I'm excited to be here, getting my CLE credit for this as well. But as I look at this budget, thing that I have a great concern over is how we are going to ensure that we onboard UPK without negatively impacting our existing childcare centers. This is a constant conversation I'm having with our partners in education to ensure that they understand that while we want to make sure that pre-K is well taught and quality is controlled, take our 4-year-olds out of our daycare centers, we're going to upset the entire economy of daycare. So that is a thing that I am hoping that we can continue to work on. And this bridge agency that we are creating between SCD and OCFS, I am optimistic that we will be able to demonstrate that this is possible, and then maybe move that into other areas of government where our agencies could work better together. So spotlight's on you guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Thanks for being here today. And last but certainly not least, Alicia, it's good to have you with us. I think you're on mute, so I just want to make sure you come on mute first.
Thank you for that. I first want to thank the Law Center for drawing attention to this very important topic. My name is Alicia Marks. I'm the owner and operator of Marks of Excellence Childcare in Amityville, New York, which is located on Long Island. I've been in operation for 28 years, which means that I've been thriving ups and downs of crises throughout this economic roller coaster over many years. We offer universal pre-K for a local school district, as well as being a partner in early childhood with Early Head Start, which includes infants, toddlers, and then, of course, I've got the before and after school care. So we take care of a myriad of modalities and of children and families in a mostly subsidized area. And I mean every pun when I say that early childhood is the birthplace of education. So while we are focusing on college students and whether or not they're graduating, I know that New York has released some very startling numbers that the graduation rates are going down, as well as children and families thriving in this economy. And so when you start with early childhood education, that's where the focus needs to be. And I want to applaud the governor, having been on the governor's task force, as well as a board member of the Child Care Council of Suffolk, that this governor has done a tremendous job in increasing the visibility and the needs of children and families. But there's so much more that needs to be done, and I'm hoping to be a part of that advocacy. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Alicia, and thank you all. And I know, Alicia, when we had chatted prior to this, that, in general and the cost of living around the state for folks is top of mind for you, and hopefully we can get into that at some point throughout this discussion as well. Nora, to kick things into a little bit more of a substantive lens, I want to move it to you. Your comment about paying for childcare for 15 years scared me because I'm only a couple years into it, but it's a good reminder. And I think that as an initial kind of threshold question, when I think of childcare, at least historically, I thought of it as being like a 0 to 3, 0 to 4. That's not the case, right? It's much broader than. So as kind of an initial threshold set of questions, can you just give us a little bit of the lay of the land on how childcare is regulated in New York, what age ranges we're talking about, what role the state, specifically OCFS, plays, and what kind of laws are in place that authorize you kind of develop the regulatory scheme for this in New York. So I know it's a lot to bite off, but I'll give you maybe 7, 9 minutes to dive into that.
Sure, happy to. So it is not just 0 to 3 or 0 to 5 or 4. It is, we regulate from 0 to 12 or almost 13. And then in some cases, we can continue caring for children up until 18 if they're court supervised or special needs. But in New York, there's about 18,000 licensed and regulated child care programs in the state. That does include the centers in the city. Those are all compliant with federal regulations. And then there is another maybe 7,000 legally exempt programs, which are your informal care settings that are working with families and supporting families. So we have a huge system. For comparison, we have approximately 4 or 5 counties that have a larger population of either providers or humans, children, than New Mexico, who is launching universal child care. So we are lots of states in our big, beautiful state. And we have a maximum license capacity of about 840,000. That's infant, toddler, and school age seats in New York. Not enough seats for everybody. There is, in fact, a shortage. We do recognize that, but it is a lot of seats. So, like I said, it's 0 to 12 typically, but there are settings where it is older than that. So OCFS regulates those childcare settings, meaning we have over 300 inspectors, licensors, regulators who visit and partner with our childcare providers on a quarterly basis. So we go out every 3 months and work with childcare providers to ensure they're meeting regulatory standards, health and safety, physical plant, training. We support them in terms of developing their program and developmentally appropriate practice. It is a federal requirement that you go to programs annually, but in New York, we want to partner with providers and be present with whatever they need. So we are out every 3 months. That is ourselves, OCFS staff, state staff, but also we contract with our childcare resource and referral agencies. I see many of them are here today, so giving them a big shout out. They do a tremendous job also in the community, acting on a lot of different roles. So the other side of our house is the childcare and development, childcare assistance program. So that does serve approximately 219,000 annually. It's currently about 170, an average of 170,000. So, and then there's about 12,000 of those that are enrolled in legally exempt, which is your informal care. So the Child Care Assistance Program is state supervised, locally administered. So each of our county DSS programs, partners, are responsible for the eligibility and enrollment of families, and then we oversee the funding allocations to the counties, monitoring their spending, making sure, as much of the state funding goes out the door as possible. Don't worry, we are spending all of those dollars. Just for perspective, it used to be the federal funding that New York State receives, which is about $832 million, was a significant portion of our kind of overall childcare funding, but because this state has now invested a tremendous amount of money, it's only about a third now. So we are a third state, two-thirds state and a third federal at this point because we have so much funding, which is wonderful, a wonderful problem to have. The other piece about kind of the childcare system that people need to remember is out there is that OCFS administers a variety of quality grants and quality initiatives to ensure that not only are the settings safe and we're regulating those settings, but we're building high quality settings across all of the age groups. And so again, we partner with our child care resource and referral agencies, our CCRCs, but we also partner with our friends at Quality Stars, which is a quality rating and improvement system. We invest in our early childhood career centers. We invest in a lot of community-based initiatives that work directly with child care providers. We partner with our unions. There is 2 unions in New York State that represent our home-based providers, CSCA Voice, which is upstate, and our UFT partners in New York City. So our unions do a lot of professional development and support specifically for our home-based providers. I will say for New York, of our 18,000 child care providers, just over 10,000 of those are home-based providers. And so if you look at our system, it's a significant amount of home-based providers. That's not where the kids are, but that's a significant number of our provider base. And so we really have this dynamic system in New York that I'm thrilled to work with in terms of how families get to choose their care and choose the education path for their kids. And we're thrilled to partner on kind of all of the different ways that we can build those quality environments. I don't know how long that was, but I'm going to stop there.
I think you met the cutoff, so thank you very much. One just quick follow-up. Support is available to families with childcare needs. How does that work? I guess we're thinking.
Yeah, you're cutting out.
Sorry, would you mind getting a little closer to the microphone? Thank you.
Pretty close now. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. It's out of my computer now. Just as a quick follow-up, when we think about public assistance, I think a lot of folks think about how childcare services are actually subsidized in New York. So do you mind just getting into a little bit more detail on how that works? Because I think that is a very centrally important piece for folks to understand what's been proposed this year. And after that, we'll kind of shift to some other questions. Thank you.
Sure, happy to. So our child care assistance program, like I said, is state supervised, locally administered. It is for eligible families making up to 85% of the state median income. That is the federally maximum allowable eligibility level, which this governor increased up to that level. It used to be 200% of federal poverty level when she took office. So that was about a family of 4 making $50,000, and it is now up to a family of 4 making $114,000. So that is an eligible family who is participating in an eligible activity, which is, again, a federal requirement. And so families can apply through their DSS. And like I said, the DSS, the Department of Social Service, does the eligibility and enrollment. Families can choose what provider they want to go to. So that is whether or not that's a home-based provider or a center or an informal care setting like an educator that likes their family member. So childcare assistance, then the county administers and pays the provider directly, and the state administers all of those allocations. So this investment in this year's budget is to add dollars to that assistance program that we then can administer to those counties and allow those counties to have additional dollars to serve more families. That's helpful.
Very much so. Thank you. Thank you. I think that lays the groundwork really well for some of our subsequent questions here. Alicia and Dede, I want to direct the next question to both of you. Obviously childcare does not happen in a vacuum. It's quite the opposite, right? There's a huge community impact, and the role that childcare providers are playing is really, Alicia, you spoke to this already, central in your community. So could you speak a little bit about what that looks like and what the pressing needs are that you're seeing that are facing not just children, but families and service providers a little bit more broadly? So Alicia, I'll start with you, but Dede, I want you to weigh in as well.
Thanks, Pat, for really zoning in on the fact that it's not just about the children, it's about the entire families. That's who we cater to. So I have approximately 160 some odd children here. So you can imagine what that comes with. So they're either guardians, parents, fathers, grandparents, whatever have you. But this is the safe haven for children. Providers offer food, education, nurturing, and we're not just, talking about leaving, children on their own. You have to supply ratios, adequate guidelines, regulations. We are doctors, nurses. We are providing a lot more than the average eye can really understand. It's not babysitting. We have transformed this whole philosophy of early childhood education from babysitting to a formal education and curriculum. So while we offer education, it's also a safe haven, a place where these children eat. And when you're caring for children, as I do, for infants and toddlers, these families are actually getting food, they're getting diapers, they're getting wipes, they're getting baby formula for free. And understand the mindset of an employer who's able to allow their employee who has their child in a quality childcare center to work without having any other additional angst or stressors about where their child is being cared for. So when we talk about quality childcare, there's a lot that comes with that in order to provide people who contribute tremendously to making New York State's economy thrive.
Great. Thank you. Dede?
Wow. There's not much to add, but I'll put on my hat, first of all, as a mom of two childcare graduates, the youngest of whom is about to graduate from high school, which is crazy. But, when I think back, I still think about the lessons I learned from the childcare educators who cared for my children. They made me a better parent. And I think for so many of us, our childcare educators are our parent, our parent educators too. And then in my role, working alongside amazing educators like Alicia in the context of the Empire State Campaign for Childcare, what I see every day is our childcare educators are sacrificing their own financial stability and well-being in order to care for the children and the families that they educate. So just to back up with some context, childcare educators are among the lowest paid professions in New York State. They earn on average $38,000 a year, which it puts many of them just above the federal poverty level. And then when we look at our family childcare educators who are a critical piece of the sector, they earn on average about $19,000 a year. And that can vary significantly based on whether they're fully enrolled but incredibly low, less than minimum wage. And this is not because the work is not very, very difficult and critically important. It is just because we have built this this model around assuming that really on the backs of this underpaid labor. And this is something that we're going to talk about in a moment when we look at sort of the budget proposals, because there are some proposals that might help us move beyond this, because New York State, and this is an issue around the country, has allowed this dynamic to exist for too long.
Great. Well, thank you both. And thank you again, Alicia, for the work you're doing every day to take care of our state children. So the next question is a little bit less positive, I suppose. But I think it's important to mention here. So New York State, along with a couple of other states, have actually sued the federal government in the last few months over a freeze on federal funding for childcare and other assistance for vulnerable families. Nora, this might be best for you, but Assemblymember Lunsford, I want you to chime in if you have anything to add here as well. Kind of a little bit on why the suit was prompted to begin with, and also maybe an update to the extent that you're allowed to share it on where things stand. So maybe Assemblymember Lunsford, I'll start with you if you have anything to add, and then Nora, certainly your position on the state side.
Sure. So I can do the law part here, if you like, about what the suit was about.
Great.
So the federal government decided, sort of on a whim, that it was going to suddenly freeze funding from three of the primary funders that we use for childcare, among other things, including the block grant and TANF and the childcare fund, all of which combine and then flow through the state to our counties and providers. The coalition of states, and we've seen this in various other capacities as the federal government has made choices. We brought suit and asked for a preliminary injunction, which was issued on February 6th, which is my birthday, so I assume that was why. And what the parameters are, since we're in a CLE for a preliminary injunction, is both that you are going to suffer immediate harm if the action that you are seeking an injunction against is allowed to continue throughout the base of the time of the lawsuit, but also that you're likely to succeed on the merits. And the judge in this case, in a very thorough analysis, if you'd like to read the case, went through why the states are likely to succeed on the merits, owing largely to the fact that there are actual parameters that HHS has to go through in order to disallow funding. There needs to be an audit. That audit needs to demonstrate some failure to comply, and then there are other procedural mechanisms that you're supposed to use. Obviously, none of those happened. And if you're interested, those of you who are getting ready for practice, you may find that the harder cases that you have throughout your career, the more unique and challenging creative lawyering is required. And I will say that the federal government had a job ahead of them justifying some of this. There are various versions of "I know you are, but what am I?" that they employ to defend their actions, but I don't think they do a very good job of it. There's absolutely no reason to have held back this funding, particularly from 5 states. And I think a key issue here is that because the federal government chose to just randomly pick 5 democratically led states, that really sort of gave away the game and put them in a tough defensive position.
That was really thorough. Thank you very much. Nora, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I love that. I can say very little about the case, right, because we're still in our active litigation, so I appreciate that, family member. The letter that prompted this came on January 6th, and we joined with the other states to file for a TRO, a temporary restraining order first, and then a preliminary injunction was received in February. I just want to reiterate to everyone on the call and on the presentation that there are no changes to the New York program today. So there was the the temporary restraining order and the preliminary injunction are in place. And so the funding is flowing to New York State. There is no changes to our child care assistance program. The funds are not. So we don't want families and providers, and I think there's a lot of anxiety out there because of the national news, kind of thinking that there's going to be some disruption. Right now, there is not any disruption, and we continue to communicate that and would appreciate everyone's help. And if there are changes, we will communicate that. But we are continuing operations as usual for New York.
Great, thank you. We're going to pause for a moment here for the CLE code, so stay tuned for everyone who is participating virtually.
Hi, everyone. Your CLE code, if you're looking for continuing legal education credit, is 415. That's the numbers 415. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Chella. And one more time, that was 415 on the CLE code, one of the easier ones for the ones I've been faced with in my career. So please take those three numbers down. So moving right along here, we're about halfway through. And of course, I said at the outset, we're right in the thick of budget negotiations. It's certainly not looking likely that a budget's going to be done in less than 48 hours. However, whatever does land, Assemblymember Lunsford may disagree, and I'll give her a chance to do that. But however the budget lands and whenever it lands, childcare will be a central component of it. So Nora, what I'm hoping you can do quickly, and then we'll hand it over to Assemblymember Lunsford and Dede to perhaps explain the one house budget proposals and how they differ. But at a high level, could you just kind of summarize what the governor's budget proposals are actually calling for this year?
Sure. Just at a high level, there's a total of $4.5 billion in the budget, in the governor's executive budget for both childcare and pre-K. I'm going to focus on childcare, obviously, very fit. So there was a $1.2 billion increase proposed for our childcare assistance program, as I said. That brings us over $3 billion with a B. There is also funding for pilots that are called, we're calling First 3NY. You hear it here first. But these are pilots proposed for three counties, Broome, Dutchess, and Monroe, counties who are interested in trying out some contracted care models that have been in existence around the country and in New York City for 20 years. But these counties, it doesn't exist yet upstate. And so we look forward to working with those counties. We are also partnering with New York City. So we're thrilled with all of the energy and commitment in New York City to their local resources. So launching 2K in New York City, the governor's committed to funding that for the first 2 years and strengthening 3K in New York City. So we're partnering with the mayor and his administration on implementing that. The last piece I'll just say, which is a tiny little thing, was the childcare zoning initiative, which was also proposed. We will be partnering, hopefully, with the Department of State, who does a smart growth program. And that really looks at kind of how counties and communities and towns can do really intentional planning for how they can build support for new childcare programs. Like, how can we expedite a lot of the steps that childcare programs have to go through? Because we're at the end of that, right? Like, we're at the licensing end of that. But before that, they have to go through, and Alicia knows this all too well, before that, they have to go through all of the code and the other pieces. So I think we're looking forward to partnering on kind of how do we make childcare friendly communities across the state so that they can open faster. Because as you all know, if we're getting to universal childcare, we need to open more. I think that was the quick walkthrough. I think I'll stop there.
Great, thank you. Member, I'll kick it to you now. I'll ask you to speak perhaps on behalf of the entire conference, but maybe your own reactions as well. What did the Assembly propose in response to the executive branch's proposals this year?
So we are trying to do what we can to support many of the governor's proposals. We've been very lucky over the last several years that childcare has been kind of the crown jewel of our budgets. But I will say, #MomSquad, having as many parents in the legislature as we have has really put us in a positive position. One thing I do want to focus on a little bit, though, is the UPK portion of this, because that's something we've been fighting for a long time. The discrepancy between upstate, or rather rest of state, and New York City rates in UPK has really been holding us back from starting meaningful UPK programs throughout the state. On average, rest of state was receiving $5,400 per student. And I can tell you that in my district, where I only had 2 UPK programs, the schools were forced to supplement that from reserves to get to maybe 7,500, which was not sustainable for them. And we had a program that kind of started and then had to get cut in half, and it just wasn't creating a sustainable system. So getting the governor to increase that to 10K per student statewide, or your foundation aid rate if higher, is an enormous win that's going to really open the door to a lot of programs that were not otherwise able to exist. It's really important that we get that through. I will say that I do have some concerns around implementation by 28, considering that so many schools, when schools are budgeting, they budget in 3 years. You have to pass a budget this year to collect the money next year to spend the money after that. So 28 seems aggressive, but let's see what we can do. And, working with educators and schools to make this program work in the communities that we're in. Something I know that we are also looking at, part of the governor's proposal was that schools needed to retain 10% of their funding to go to community partners. And what's interesting is in some of the rural areas around our state, there are no community partners. So figuring out ways to create flexibility for different parts of the state so that they can best utilize that funding has been a big focus of what we're doing, ensuring flexibility in how these programs are shaped for the communities that they're in. A lot of this isn't necessarily even what you're going to see in the budget. It's the conversations that we're having as we're negotiating them, because so much of our budget just accepted the governor's proposals. But I think more so want to focus on something we don't see, which is workforce. Workforce is something that we focused on in prior years, but you don't see this year. And we can give all the money and all the subsidies, but if we aren't supporting the workforce, we don't have the slots. My entire district is a childcare desert. So until we do more to support increasing the rates of pay for the people who do this work, which is some of the most important work in our caring economy, we're not going to deal with the slot problem, which is really the core issue at the heart of so much of what is holding back our childcare as a whole.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. I want to come back to workforce, Alicia. I'm going to come to you on that in just a minute.
Okay.
We heard a lot more about the assembly side. Could you speak a little bit to maybe what the Senate has proposed, in the sense that if it is, in fact, different from the assembly, which my guess is it probably is a little bit, but certainly any other reactions you have would be welcome at this point. So.
Yeah, and I'm gonna pick up right where the assembly member left off, which is the critical importance of investing in the childcare workforce. And really, especially at this juncture with the state fully committed to achieving universal childcare, there's really no way to get there to create sufficient capacity and to retain and build the workforce without prioritizing increasing compensation. The Senate did include $500 million to create a childcare workforce compensation fund. And this is a really important first step. We think that really the only way to increase compensation while we have the current system, which is really a public-private market, we're moving towards universal childcare, which will be fully publicly funded. But right now, Pat, as you know all too well, and Nora, the majority of families have to pay out-of-pocket tuition. And so if we do not, the only way that you can raise compensation for this workforce is either by raising tuition, which no family can afford to pay more, or by having a public infusion of compensation supplements. So we were really excited to see the Senate propose include this proposal in their one house budget. I will also just flag a couple of other great things that were included in the Assembly one house. One is there is a proposal to end this deeply inequitable rule, which actually deems families ineligible for child care assistance if they earn too little. There is actually this minimum earnings requirement, and the families that it tends to hit hardest are parents who are working in sort of the gig economy, or they may be running their own small business, like childcare programs, who are childcare educators in home-based settings are often earning less than the equivalent of the minimum wage. So these are the kinds of families who can actually be deemed ineligible for child care assistance, even though they are working really hard and actually are earning so little, that they would benefit. They're among the families who would benefit most from child care assistance. So we were thrilled to see that proposal. And I'll just flag, there were also both houses proposed additional funding and support for after school programming. And this just sort of underscores how all the parents out there know that your need for childcare assistance doesn't end when your child enters pre-K or elementary school, unless you are lucky and have your work hours exactly line up with the school day. But since that is not most people's reality, it's really, really important for the continuum of care to have investment in pre-K. So yeah, lots to celebrate and build from.
Great. Well, thank you all. Alicia, I want to take a bit of a detour here because we've heard a lot about what is in the proposals, either from the executive or from one of the houses or both. Certainly there's some things that aren't in here, but I want to make sure that you, being the one of all of us who's closest to the day-to-day work being done, is there anything else that you think is missing from this discussion? I know we've talked workforce, so maybe a word on that. When you and I have discussed this privately also, the idea of children with disabilities and kind of the complex needs that are developing from a really young age. So maybe just a few thoughts from you on that, if you don't mind.
If I could just backpedal just a little bit, just to reinforce the emphasis on the workforce, because if you could understand that if you have a full daycare of children and no one running it, and there's, the analogy I like to use, a full busload of children and no bus driver, the bus is going nowhere. So if we don't attack the workforce in the way that they receive the value that they deserve, I've spoken to 3 different families on 3 different occasions in 3 different economic brackets that say they have children in childcare. Maybe Pat, you can identify with this. And they loved the teacher that their child had. And all 3 of these parents said that their teacher left and went to work for Trader Joe's. So I really can't drive that home any more significantly than to say that it's a dangerous place for a provider to be or for a child to be when you have turnover rates that exceed what is considered acceptable. The only way we're going to make this whole system work is if we give the families what they need and we cover those bases, but as well have a value attached or a system salary, according to what Dee said, and with a career ladder that compensates us for what we do each and every day. And if you spent 1 day a week in a childcare center of my size, then you would understand what we're talking about. And I just want to expose that more and more. Yes, Pat, since COVID, we have experienced children with disabilities coming through our doors and not being equipped financially to put another person in the classroom to be a see-it, or to be able to economically as well as educationally, because we're not equipped educationally to care for children such as this, and the red tape that goes along with it to get a child diagnosed, whether it's the parent who's in denial or whether it's the school district that does not have the capacity to respond quickly enough. In the meantime, you have a child that could elope from a class at any given time. So those specific problems that we go through all day, every day, means that there's a lot of stress on the teacher, the child, and the class as a whole, and you won't have the proper outcomes for kindergarten. Mainly, these children are, because of the red tape and the lack of intense supervision or response, is usually when they're 4 years old. So early intervention is 3 and under, and 4 years old, you're going through the school district. So we as providers need some assistance in that venue, as a tremendous need. And whether you are blue collar, white collar, no collar, all these children need to have specific help and needs that need to be addressed in the supervisory manner. It's not just about giving tax credits to families. It's about equipping your staff with feeling that they're valued, because they don't make much more than the families they're serving. So they need food on their table and a roof over their heads. So we won't, continue to make this industry thrive and grow at the rate it needs to without supporting them in that way.
Thank you for that insight.
If I could add, actually, there's a bill that got put in. Me and Andy have a seat, put it in at the same time. And I was like, Andy, you're the chair. Take it. Better chance of getting it in, to create an enhanced rate for UPK for children with disabilities, because it's not you if children with disabilities aren't included in that. And ensuring that we provide enhanced rates is really important. Never mind the challenges that our 803 schools who are serving children with profound disabilities have in setting pre-K rates, which is a separate issue. But this is something that we are actively working on in the Assembly this year, trying to figure out how to meet those needs, in addition to our perennial fight about early intervention.
Great. Thank you. That was a helpful segue. We also want to talk here, because I'm mindful of time. We're at 13 minutes and counting down. We try to end these right at 1 o'clock. And we want to leave a few minutes for questions at the end. But after the budget's passed, whenever it's passed, there is a big implementation piece to this. There's been some kind of suggestions here that how soon this happens is always, a big part of the discussion. Nora, I want to ask you this, but Assembly Member, I'm sure you have some thoughts on this as well, and Dede maybe as well. What are these next steps, assuming that most of what we're talking about here lands in the budget, which it seems likely that it will? What are the first steps, maybe from OCFS, and then curious from other partners?
We are prepared to work directly with the counties once the funding is approved to get the funding out to counties via an allocation. And so we send out that direction to the counties, and then we work with every single county, including New York City, on the implementation of their funding. So the counties are able to make their spending decisions and projections. And so we have regular engagement with all of the counties, as well as the county commissioners and our partners at the New York Public Welfare Association, which is the group of counties, to get the direction out as quickly as possible. So we've drafted that information. We know that everybody wants that out immediately, as do we. And so the counties are poised for that information. In terms of the pilots, they're going to take a little bit longer. These are brand new pilots, brand new contracts, brand new systems technology systems we have to set up. New York City is expanding on their existing systems, so they have existing contracts with existing providers and existing technology, so they're able to move a lot faster, which is great. So that is, going to be up and running by the fall, and we're going to work with the counties who are the pilots to be able to get their funding out later this year as well. So we know this is everybody's top priority. As my commissioner likes to say, this is the governor's baby, literally, and we like babies, so we're good to get this out as quickly as possible.
Great, thank you. Assembly Member Dede, any thoughts on your end from the implementations, next steps?
Sure. So my county is one of the pilots, and we're very excited about it. I've already been having conversations with our county executive and part of his team, trying to get my 2 cents in for what I would like to see as part of our pilot, because these are very open-ended. to the point that 3 different pilots could do 3 completely different things. And it gives us a lot of opportunity to, be laboratories and test out some theories. I know Assemblymember Clark and I are very focused on maximizing these dollars because, $20 million in Monroe County is going to be spent very differently than $20 million in Broome County. It doesn't go quite as far. But one thing that I'm hoping we can do is particularly around after school and children with disabilities, that we can create some really innovative programming. But figuring that out to make sure that we are poised for when that money drops is going to be imperative in each of these situations. So I think continuing to have open communication between OCFS and our counties is very important.
Thank you. Dede?
Yeah, so I can't help myself because the budget is not quite done. We're not giving up yet. Unless Assemblymember Lunsford tells me that something's happening that I'm not aware
We
of.
still have, we're not late yet. We still have to
Yeah,
pretend
that's right.
like
You're
I'm going to
right.
get it done.
Right. We still have a couple of days.
That's fine.
And so because there's still a few days, I just want to highlight the critical importance of including sufficient investment in the child care assistance program to actually end the enrollment closures all over the state. Right now, 35 counties and New York City have closed enrollment or started wait lists because of inadequate investment. And that's because it's such a important, popular program that there is so much demand for it. But we worry that even with the governor's historic proposed investments in the program, it is going to be insufficient to meet demand all over the state. And this worries us because, as we're moving towards a universal program, we think it's critically important that we prioritize the lowest income families, those families who really need childcare assistance to achieve economic security and make ends meet. Imagine a family with a 4-year-old and an infant, and even if the 4-year-old is able to get a seat in pre-K, if the infant is on a child care wait list and unable to get child care assistance, that family at least one parent can't get back to work. And one other reason, sort of clearing the wait lists and meeting need with CCAP is so critical to the ultimate goal of universal childcare, is that these wait lists are one of the contributors to keeping wages low. And I alluded to this earlier, particularly for home-based childcare providers. Their wages are cut in half, or even can go even lower, depending on their enrollment. If they have, are operating at full capacity, they're still not making anywhere near what they are worth. But they're getting closer to minimum wage. But when their seats are empty, which is what's happening because many of the families that they serve are languishing on wait lists. So thrilled with what the governor has invested to get us started, and just looking for the leaders to build towards fully meeting demand for childcare assistance in this budget.
Great, thank you. Any kind of final words from the other 3 panelists? I do want to get into a question or two. We've gotten a bunch. We'll probably have time for 1 or 2. But if there's any other kind of final thoughts before we do that, feel free to weigh in now. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to try to take these questions in the order that they're coming in. I think one of them just maybe was more of a clarification when it comes to the impact of some of the proposals on like home-based and childcare. So Nora, maybe I can kick it to you for that. I think there's obviously a bunch of different types of settings that children are receiving services in. So could you talk a little bit more about that side of it and how it's impacted or not by what's proposed?
Yep. So regulated family childcare settings, educational settings are eligible to receive CCAP and do serve a large number of our families receiving childcare assistance, as Dee mentioned. So they are eligible with this expansion or with the additional investment. They'll be kind of being able to work with the counties on what that means to serve families. CCAP is a family benefit. It's not a provider benefit, but our family childcare settings are eligible to serve families through CCAP.
Great, thank you. Kind of going through our queue here, another question, and Dede, I think this touches on what you were talking about, but I'll just kind of put a finer point on it. There's a question on, are there any updates on additional CCAP funding for counties that have actually run out of funding? I'm not sure how that works its way in here, but it would be best to answer it, but wanted to put that on the floor.
Well, I mean, I can start, but Nora, I mean, I do want to underscore what Nora said at the outset. The governor's executive proposal, which both of the one houses have accepted, and so we're very hopeful we'll end up at least the 1.2 billion that the governor has proposed in additional child care assistance funds. We're very hopeful that will end up in the final budget, and that is going to mean a significant increase in the block grants that go out to each of the counties. And we are very hopeful that even with those funds, that's going to alleviate many of the wait lists. However, based on our computations, it likely won't meet need completely. So.
Thank you. Nora, did you want to add to that at all?
I would just add the funding, the $3 billion does require that counties, spend their allocated dollars. So the $3 billion does include a small portion of county contribution. So that is New York State pays 98% of the child care assistance program. Counties pay 2%. Outside of New York City, that has not changed since I was in high school, which was not that long ago. But I would say that has not changed, and they pay a small amount of dollars outside of the city. Last year, the city's maintenance of effort, which is their local contribution, was increased. But this is a significant effort here, and we hope to work with counties and all of you to make sure that we are reaching as many families as we can.
Great, thank you both. One question, maybe this is more of a clarification here, but I want to make sure we answer it. Are there any specific government resources being cut for childcare in New York State right now? And I'm not sure if this is in reference to, maybe it's in reference to the federal litigation and what the cuts, the freeze could mean, but maybe just a finer point on that from Nora or whoever is most comfortable answering that.
There's no changes to any of the child care assistance or other programs. So appreciate getting that word out because there's a lot of concern.
Great. Well, we're just coming up on time here. So maybe I can give each of you 2 sentences to summarize your thoughts on this as we wrap up. And thank you again, all of you for being with us today and for all the work you do on behalf of the state's families and young people. So Alicia, I'll start with you for a last sentence.
Thanks, Pat. I'd just like all of your audience to keep in mind, if you do have children, think of caring for your own, multiplying that times 10. Each child has a separate need, has separate personalities that need to be met. And OCFS and New York State and the governor have put all these mandates and as well as philosophies, rules, regulations. We do it all, soup to nuts. And so while this is such a hot topic, we understand that we care, we love children, we want to care for them, but passion isn't enough. We need the funding to support the workforce for what they do to make pay equity a real thing. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator?
Just to piggyback on that, workforce. We can't do anything without the people who actually do the work in the field. And it's, something that I feel we didn't meet in the budget this year, but it is otherwise hard to complain about what the governor's given us. This was a long time in the making, and having our first grandma governor has been a demonstrable change in the way childcare has been looked at as a policy issue. I think this is a great step forward, and I'm really excited to see what comes of these pilots and what kind of changes we can bring into next year and the year after.
Thank you. We are at time, but Dede, Nora, any final thoughts before we wrap things up here?
Just thank you, and really excited to be in New York, to be a New Yorker. It's a good time to be a New Yorker. There is opportunity, and together I'm hopeful we're going to achieve universal childcare here in New York State very soon.
Ditto all those things. So thank you. Thanks for having us.
Okay. Thank you all again. Thank you for everyone who joined us. And our next program, just like this, is on April 20th about the uncertainty in the healthcare space in New York, based on kind of federal funding and similar issues to what we talked about here. So thank you again. We'll see you all soon. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for the opportunity.